Hi, Bill. Bob McGrath calling.
Hey, Bob McGrath. It's good to finally talk with you, sir.
Likewise. How are you today?
I'm doing really good today. We so appreciate you stopping by South Georgia.
Oh, sounds like it'd be a nice, warmer place than up here right now.
Well, we got a lot of rain too, and the humidity's pretty warm though. But it's I'm sure it's much different than where you're at in Maine for sure. So.
Yeah, well, it's nothing compared to what it will be, but it's in the 50s or so right now.
Yeah,
and rainy.
I hear you. Well, Bob, I wanted to first touch upon before we start talking about Songs of Love, and I'm Songs of Love Foundation. I want to talk a little bit about your time with Sesame Street.
All right.
You were a huge staple on the show for me and my sister growing up. Is there a certain episode that stands out in your mind that you remember that you love the best about Sesame Street?
Well, I think it would be in one of two episodes that I think stands out in everyone's mind, both everyone on the cast, and that probably was the show that we call Goodbye, Mr. Hooper, when Will Lee, Mr. Hooper, passed away. And that was one of the most beautifully written shows. It was fortunate that we were in a period of hiatus for 2 or 3 months when Mr. Hooper passed away. And there was a dilemma. They didn't know how they were going to explain this to the kids. We knew that he had a sister, presumably this is an imaginary sister that lived in Florida. And, they went through all this possible scenarios. Maybe he went down to visit and spent a long time with his sister that he hadn't seen. And then everyone said from our research department and the cast that, the kids really loved Mr. Hooper and they deserved to know what really happened to him. And they thought it was a unique opportunity to really help kids understand about death and dying. So they brought in every possible kind of child expert and specialist that you can imagine, and they finally formulated an outline and a script that covered about 6 important things that children should know. Among them, that if a person dies, they never, ever come back. So they wrote this beautiful, beautiful script, and we all got the script ahead of time and memorized it, of course. And on the day of the shooting, we really spent a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours rehearsing, which is longer than we typically do on a segment that's going to be 10 or 15, 20 minutes long or 30 minutes long. And we just did it totally dry with no emotion because it was so emotionally packed we didn't know if we'd ever get through it. And finally when John Stone, the director, said, well, we're going to go to tape now, and we knew we were taping it, and we went through it, and we barely got through the script, and any emotions that you see on that show there was no acting involved in any of those. Were all coming from the heart and the soul. And when we finished, we were practically all in tears and quite shaken up by the script and what we had done. And John came out and he said it was wonderful, but he said there's one place we'd like to do a little pickup, and we kind of reluctantly said okay, and we didn't know if we could really get through it again. So we started a pickup where he wanted to have a second shot at it, and we got about, maybe a minute and a half or 2 minutes into that segment, and we kind of just all lost it. And he said, never mind, cut. He said, we'll go with the original edition, the original version. So what you see is what you got on the first time through. But that is an incredibly beautifully written show. That's one that stands out in everyone's memory. And I was fortunate to see Will the night before he passed away, and that was kind of an honor. And I was so thrilled to be able to do that. And the other wonderful show is called Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, and I won't go into detail, but that's out on DVD, and people are playing that every year, 25, 30 years after it was filmed. So those are 2 of the most memorable. And all of the people in your neighborhood pieces that I had the opportunity and the thrill to do with Frank Oz and Jim Henson all stand out because wonderful, incredible, crazy things happened during the shooting of those pieces with Frank and Jim. They were wonderful. They were brilliant, and they did a lot of little ad-libbing here and there just before I had to sing the verse about the doctor or the baker or whomever we were talking about, and I had everything I could do to keep from cracking up because I never knew what they were going to throw at me. So those are 2 of many, many, many special moments of the show.
And growing up, watching Sesame Street, I think my sister and I were about the same age, around, in our early 40s. We remember that episode, and we were asking our parents all kinds of questions about it, so it's definitely memorable for sure. Songs of Love Foundation. How did you get involved with this organization? How did you first hear about it, Bob?
I'll tell you. I'll make it as brief as I can because it's a very long story. But basically, my daughter had a very close friend, and she was volunteering with the organization and the founder and president, John Beltzer. And she called me. She said, I'm working with a great organization. She told me a little bit about it, which I'll mention in a moment, called Songs of Love, John Beltzer. And she said, they write a special song for a special sick child. Original music, original lyrics, and only that child will, that's the only place that song would be available is when it's given to that child. And she said, we've done several thousand of them. And to tell you the truth, I was more than skeptical. I thought, this is some kind of a ripoff. This can't be quite true, that they write thousands of songs for kids, a special song for a very sick child, many of whom are going through cancer treatment, etc. But I got in touch with John. We had a couple of meetings, and the more I got to know about it, the more I was knocked out. I was so impressed with what he was doing, to the point now that jumped a little bit. Since 1999, I believe they're in that area, they've written over 26,000 songs for 26 special children. And so I've done a few of them with him. One of the ones that I will never forget was a wonderful little boy and called Ronald Sterling. And he was in what we didn't know then, his final days or months of his life with a very severe form of cancer. And John called and said, we're going to do it out at Shea Stadium. They have an event going. They've got about 15,000 teenagers out there from high school. And he said, I want you to sing the song. We'll pre-record your part in the studio, and then we'll go out there and we'll sing it for these 15,000 kids, and we'll teach them the chorus. And I thought, this is crazy. He's going to try and teaching, 15,000 kids sitting in the stadium the chorus to a song. Well, he's incredibly good at doing this. He's a wonderful musician, as his twin brother was, and I'll mention how this came to be. And so we went out to Shea Stadium, and we sang my part, pre-recorded. We played that back to them. And then in a matter of, less than 10 minutes, he taught them the chorus. And he got his microphones out. We recorded the song with the whole chorus singing. Up in the chorus is Ronald Sterling. Finished that, went back out into the dugout. He had a little portable recording studio with him, and they dubbed the whole thing together. We went right from there over to the hospital where Ronald was, and we played it for him, and he was just big, huge smiles came over his face. He wanted to hear it again and again. We played it 2 or 3 times, and had a party. One of the things in the lyrics in the song, they adapt everything in the song to the child, no matter what his favorite sports might be, or his favorite games, or his friends, or his pets, or people in his family, and that's all incorporated into the song as a special lyric. So we played it, and then one of the things he liked was donuts or cupcakes with sprinkles. So that was in there. So we had a cupcake with sprinkle party for him, and it was a wonderful event, and it was so meaningful to him. And unfortunately, maybe 2, 3, 4 months later, he passed away, and I called and found out where his funeral arrangement. I went to his funeral, and all his family was there, and they said nothing was more important to him in his life than this song that he played for his doctors and nurses. And every time he had to go in for treatment, he played it before, played it for the doctors while he was going under treatment, chemotherapy, and so forth. And so that was tremendously, that made an incredible impact on me of seeing how John actually worked. So the fun thing you might, I think, is interesting to know, it's called Songs of Love because his fraternal twin, they were both from Brazil. They came up to the States when they were very young, and they were wonderful musicians, and they had act, and they wrote music together. And his twin, Julio, he wrote this song called Songs of Love just 2 months before he died. And John was pretty devastated, needless to say, and kind of wondered where his life should go at that point because they were working as an act together. And he said at one point, after I got to know him, he said, he sort of had an epiphany and said, I'm going to dedicate my life and start an organization called Songs of Love in honor of my brother, and something that might be wonderful for thousands of kids. He had no idea that there were going to be over 20,000 songs at some point. 26,000 they just surpassed. And so he started the organization and named it Songs of Love because that was the last song that his brother, he died rather tragically and prematurely. And so, you know, it's a wonderful way to, I mean, it's an incredible way how this whole concept and Songs of Love got off the ground.
Absolutely.
And since then they've had hundreds of musicians and songwriters. They've written, as I said, over 26,000 songs all over the country, and including David Lee Roth and Jason Mraz, Michael Bolton, Elmo, on the song, and I've done them, and hundreds of other artists, and they all donate their time and energy for doing this. So it's a nonprofit organization for anybody that knows that kind of thing, but it's just a fantastic idea that I became so enamored with. And as a matter of fact, do we have 2 minutes? John wrote me a letter recently from a person who's a certified child life specialist at the Children's Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. It's only 4 or 5 lines long. Can I read that to you?
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
I don't know what our timeline is like. He said, Songs of Love is such an invaluable, as I said, this person, Siri Bream is the name, certified child life specialist from the Children's Hospital in Richmond, Virginia, and said, quote, Songs of Love is such an invaluable gift for our children and families that counteracts and comforts any of the fear, anger, or grief that an illness or injury brings. The healing power of music is huge, but the power of feeling validated, of being honored, of being important enough to have a song that is entirely all about you gives our patients a sense of belonging in this world, a sense of hope, a renewed purpose, and a determination to live. So that's such a wonderful, validation of what John has done. And it's valid enough where it's been featured in incredible things on 60 Minutes with Dan Rather, The Today Show, CNN, ABC, World News, NBC Nightly News, New York Times, Parade May, and many, many others. So, everybody has to make sure that this is an up and going and honest organization. They wouldn't run those kinds of specialists dedicated and honoring John. They have a song sponsorship program, and I was thinking that if I were a person who had a very sick child, who maybe was going through chemotherapy or whatever, you can sponsor a Song of Love for a sick child, and they charge $250, which is absolute minimal, and this helps keep the organization going. And what they get for that is they receive a copy of the CD with their names on the liner notes of the CD booklet. And I would think that anybody that may have had a friend or a child of their own or a relation who either passed away and wants to do it in their memory, it would be a wonderful kind of thing to know that some other sick child is going to receive this. And they recently started something, that's one idea, and I can give you the website, by the way, for anyone that wants to check this out, is quite easy to remember. It's just www.songsoflove.org. So it's the name of the organization, songsoflove.org. And there's an 800 number if they want to call it, 800-960-SONG, 800-960-SONG. But that now, they have what's called the Songs of Love Experience, and it's a charitable team-building program from organizations that allows engages audiences of all sizes and kinds in the live recording of the Songs of Love for local sick children. And we did this at Shea Stadium. We just did a golf outing, and it's a great way to bring organizations together. We did this for another child just about a month ago out in Long Island. They had a golf outing, and there was a dinner that night, and there were 200 or 300, 400 people there. And they created a song for this little girl who was there, and I had pre-recorded the basic verses for it. And then in a matter of, 5 or 10 less minutes, John taught the whole audience the chorus on this. He had the microphones there. He recorded the chorus, singing along with it, and then presented the CD, burned the CD, and gave it to the little girl right there. She was wonderful. But I'll tell you, when you see these people, any organization that wants to kind of has a team effort of building a spirit of a team and spirit of the organization, it's a really unique and fantastic way. He brought them all up to the front of the auditorium from their dinner tables, facing him. He taught them the chorus, and they were so enthusiastic. They just sang their hearts out, and I have a feeling it was probably more meaningful than the whole golf outing and any other thing that someone could put together. So that's a really wonderful thing for people to think about that have organizations that like to bring all of their workers together, in a more meaningful kind of way.
Songsoflove.org is the website that they need to remember, and you've got a video up there detailing everything about Songs of Love, and it sounds like a tremendous organization that's doing some wonderful things.
It really is. There's a lot of things that you question whether it's valid, whether it's on the up and up, whether it's a scam, but I can tell you this is the most honest, wonderful, incredible organization I think I've ever worked with. It's right up there at the very, very top.
Bob, I appreciate you stopping by South Georgia, and best of luck to this organization, and we will provide all the links on our website as well for it.
Well, Bill, I appreciate you taking the time, and I hope your listeners have enjoyed this, and if you play it a couple of times, maybe they'll get some action on it.
Okay.
Thank you so much
Sounds
for taking
good.
the time.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.